Hello again, Professor Page. I just finished watching or listening to the podcast with Jacqueline Woodson, and there were, most of it's obviously super interesting, but there were a few things that stood out to me a lot. One of the topics of conversation that she brings up, I actually just kind of talked about in my first response, or in the first link I sent you about ways of teaching and the education styles. And she was talking about how she doesn't want her kid to be in the classroom with a teacher who is stuck in their old school ways. And she was saying that basically, if you're a teacher and you're uncomfortable with something such as hip hop or rap, go home and listen to it to kind of expose yourself to that thing you might be uncomfortable with. And she was also saying that fear gets in the way of innovation, which I have been thinking about, and definitely was super thought-provoking in that I think that could be related to forms of education and how teachers and systems in general, or people that might run these schools in our country, they might be afraid to change their ways in the classroom, and how that can get in the way of innovation. Super interesting to think about. Obviously, I've already do think about this a lot, and I think that it's so important for there to be some sort of paradigm shift in terms of the way that we're learning and the way that we're teaching our children in the classroom. What else does she talk about? She talks about how writing was the only thing that she could see herself doing for the rest of her life and enjoying. And I think this is interesting for me because I'm 28 years old, and I've had a really hard time with trying to pick something that I think that I want to pursue, or something that I really want to do for a long time, which is kind of why it's taken me such a long time to finish my associate's degree, because I've just been kind of taking classes and going to school without really having a super solid direction. And I kind of have overanalyzed the crap out of choosing a career path to the point where it's been crippling. So paralysis by analysis. I'm sure you're familiar with the term. It's actually something that I'm working on with my therapist right now. But just trying to trust myself and trust the process and know that I'll figure it out. But I just started thinking about that because obviously she had this one thing that she could see herself doing for her whole life, and she's doing it. And I also have really enjoyed writing and just literature in general, and all of my English classes, and graphic novel, that class, and my poetry class, and this class, and like I said, the multiple English classes that I've taken in college, as well as throughout my education from a young girl to to a high school or graduating high school. English was always where I excelled. And now I again am just kind of rambling on, but it's maybe writing is what I want to do. And I feel I've always kind of thought about it, and it's always been in the back of my mind, and it's also been this thing that I could see myself doing for the rest of my life. But I think I've just held myself back from really exploring it and pursuing it. So yeah, that was something that got my wheels spinning. Yeah, the whole podcast was just interesting because she is just obviously a super interesting woman. And I also like how she talked about how she said everything is hard when the person who was on the podcast was talking about writing, and he was saying that it's really hard, and she said everything is hard, and if you expect to have an easy life, then your life will be less than ordinary. And this is kind of another thing that I think about a lot, especially as I get older, is how can I push myself to do the uncomfortable things and the hard things to just grow and evolve as a person, and what tools can I use in order to take those leaps of faith and do the riskier things that will teach me a lot and help me grow as a person. That's all I've got.